because with the trolley problem, you're basically faced with either killing a small amount or letting a large amount die. That's basically the trolley problem, and you've got to choose one or the other, right? There's no leeway. Obviously, in The Dark Knight, there's the leeway that they evacuate the patients. I think that the hospital that did blow, I don't know whether the hospital that blew up was occupied or not. But yeah, that's the idea, and that's something that that can crop up sometimes when it comes to I hate to violate Godwin's law here, but could it be argued that killing Hitler would have saved that hundreds of thousands of millions of lives? Could that be argued? Could the Hitler prevention problem be deemed as a version of the trolley problem? I don't know, but it's something to think about. Another thing from The Dark Knight, again from the Joker, is the all part of the plan speech, and this is one thing that's actually become quite a famous meme on the internet, where people they list something that they list two important things, one thing that society actually cares about, and one thing that society doesn't care about, and it's largely the thing that people most care about is the unimportant thing, and that's one thing that is actually evident to see so much when we see the media highlighting so many things that just don't even matter. And people get so twisted up by it, and because I've talked about this in previous episodes where I talk about the echo chamber that is the Jeremy Vine show, where people that they encourage clueless people who aren't really qualified to talk about subjects. Say, well, here's what I think, but it's topics like that sort of like derail considerations of what we should actually be thinking about, what we should actually be prioritising on, and but just to solidify this more, the actual quote from the film itself is he says, quote, what I've noticed? Nobody panics when things go according to plan, even if the plan is horrifying. If tomorrow I tell the press that like a gangbanger will get shot, or a truckload of soldiers will be blown up, nobody panics, because it's all part of the plan. But when I say that one little old mayor will die, well then everyone loses their minds. Alright? This is all partly because, I'd say it's mostly because there's a certain amount of violence that a culture is conditioned to just accept. We accept that soldiers die in war. We accept that gangbangers get shot. But we don't accept, singular murders that are, basically in our faces. One of the reasons, going back to horror films for just a second, the reason why films like Halloween were so scary was because it took horror films out of the hyper-real settings that they were in that weren't completely relatable for an audience, and put in the settings in something that's extremely relatable, something that you can watch and say, that could very well be my house. That kind of does look like my house. That is my house. Something like that. That's why it's so scary. But the the idea is that we're focusing on the wrong things in our society. We're focusing on the wrong questions. We're focusing on the wrong pieces of information. We're focusing on the wrong beliefs, for one thing. I mean, yes, I know that you can't choose your beliefs, because essentially you're just forced by the evidence. You're forced by what you're convinced by to believe. That's the idea. You don't choose your beliefs. Your beliefs choose you. But yeah, I mean, even though I don't agree with the vast majority of what the Joker says, but he does make a couple of good points, and that's one of them. Another thing that happens in the Dark Knight that's a bit of a moral dilemma is the 2 boats and 2 bombs. This is when I think when the city's on lockdown or something, and basically there's 2 boats in the river. One of them is full of prisoners, and the other one is just full of civilians, right? And the Joker basically reveals that there's a bomb on there's 2 bombs, one on each boat, and each boat has the trigger for the detonator for the other boat's bomb, and they're given a certain time limit, and basically says if you turn the switch, you will basically end them, but you've got to do it before they do, and you don't know whether they will be so inclined not to just go immediately boom. But as we find in the example, there's a particular argument that one of the characters uses, and it's the civilian guy. He said they had their chance. Now this is one argument that is used a lot in our society, where we bring up the idea of when we bring up the fact that people suffer in prison, and people get tortured in prisons, but also when it comes to the idea of human rights for prisoners, and the main argument for people who don't want to grant equal rights to prisoners, like for example the right to vote, is they had their chance, they made their decisions, they've essentially by their actions they've forfeited the comforts and privileges essentially of a civilized society because they have transgressed against it. But the thing is, why does that only seem to apply within that arbitrarily decided time limit of their sentence? Why is their human rights conditional? Why are you putting a sand timer on their human rights? But also in a lot of senses, this is actually the attitude of the 99% held by the 1%. If you think about it, if they hear people complaining that they're deprived or whatever, they say, "Well, you had your chance. You should have worked harder. I'm starving. This area is stricken with cholera. Well, you should have worked harder. Should have been more competitive." It's the ethos that our current monetary system has. It's unbelievable. But the main thing that I want to talk about from The Dark Knight is the decision towards the end when Harvey Dent dies. Obviously, by that point, he's killed a couple of people, some of them police officers. But Batman and Commissioner Gordon, decide to lie about it and not tell the truth that it was actually Harvey Dent that did it, purely because Harvey Dent was the lead prosecutor and got, hundreds of organised criminals off the streets and in prison, right? So in order to maintain Harvey Dent's reputation, and thus by association also the population's faith in the criminal justice system, they have to lie and say that it wasn't Dent, it was actually Batman. Because, Batman himself, he volunteers to basically be the patsy for it. And for them to basically tell everyone else that it was Batman that killed them. Now why? Was the Joker's corruption of Dent really that damaging to the very fabric of Gotham society? Yes, the Joker was able to very successful. The Joker himself says it better. He said, "Insanity is very much like gravity. All it takes is a little push." Now, if you think about it, Dent is reeling from not only having literally half of his body burnt, and he's refusing pain medication, but also he's extremely grief-stricken because his girlfriend's just got blown up, right? And you take the Joker coming into your room dressed as a nurse, talking to you about, some inherent immorality of mankind, and that anarchy is fair, and that a destructive path in life is going to be your salvation, and obviously he's going to be tipped over. But it's the idea that that Dent was the golden boy that was cleaning up Gotham streets, And why did Batman say that he should take the fall? Because he is whatever Gotham needs him to be. The quote that he gives is that sometimes the truth isn't good enough. Sometimes people deserve more. Sometimes people deserve to have their faith rewarded. What more is there than truth? A lie? How does that help anything? And if Batman is supposed to be, an entrusted silent protector, then how does it help for those you protect to think you're a murderer? This would only really work if the truth were to eventually come out that Batman and Batman to thus be trusted again and not boycotted, which means that the lie was unnecessary from the beginning. So just tell people the truth. The justice system is criminal, and Dent will stand as a testament to the idea that violence is what brings people down, regardless of who they are. You don't need to make our lawyers into icons because, Gotham has a big general organised and corporate crime problem, and the only means we currently have against that is the prison and justice system, the one thing guaranteed to enhance the violence in that society. Oh, and a mysterious Cape Vigilante who took the rap for murder because he is whatever Gotham needs him to be. But, was Harvey Dent a true hero? Is the moral teaching at the end of The Dark Knight really a true moral message? Why is it moral to cover over the downfall of a lawyer? Because Batman called him the best of us. Obviously because he, not just because he's taking criminals off the streets, but he's doing what people should be doing anyway. supposedly, right? I mean, at Dent's funeral, Gordon calls him not the hero we deserved, but the hero we needed. When he's saying that, does he mean Harvey Dent the lawyer? Or does he mean Harvey Dent as in Harvey Two-Face? Because the thing is, the reason why he was called Two-Face was because that was an old nickname of his. Because, because he worked in, I think it was because when he worked in internal affairs, he was called Harvey Two-Face. So there was even like a little bit of a precursor to that sort of thing. So there was already a frame of reference for what sort of thing, because he had the whole thing with a coin and everything, and he was already threatening people with shooting them in the head before the Joker got a hold of him. No, it was after. No, sorry, I take that back. But he was already sort of, he was verbose. He is a verbose character, and especially if you have, a main character that's acting in this verbose and heroic way towards, the bad guys that are generally the criminals. Surely, that means he should be elevated up to hero status, right? Well, the idea that Gotham didn't deserve and need the hero it deserved and needed, that to me is absurd. First of all, why are they separate issues? Why is a hero that people deserve and that they need, why aren't they the same thing? I suppose it's partly to do with the unspoken assumption that, in the film, that Gotham is a cruel and unenlightened place, and it only needs those who actually prop up the system itself and stand up for the criminal justice system. That's another point. The film assumes that the criminal justice system, as it stands, in addition to utilising a psychiatric hospital, Arkham Asylum, is the best we can do. It assumes that. It doesn't speak on any terms on how human violence can be prevented, but rather that it's an ongoing struggle that has to be perpetually sort of, just tortured out all the time. Just keep going, keep fighting crime, keep fighting crime. But as I said earlier, punishing crime just generates more. But there's a interesting line that Harvey Dent actually uses. He says, "This is not about what I want; it's about what is fair." Because he suffered a loss with Rachel that died, so he wanted to get back at those who killed him, even though he didn't get back at the Joker. But anyway, carrying on with the quote. You thought we could be decent men in an indecent time, but you're wrong. The world is cruel, and the only morality in a cruel world is chance, unprejudiced, unbiased, fair. End quote. I can think of something else which isn't a moral system, but it can do the same job. The scientific method. But Dent's comment about decent men in an indecent time, it does have partial merit, since as human beings we grow and develop in response to and influencing society. So in this sense, we are a mirror of society, and society is a mirror of us. This fractal relationship, if you want to call it that, they have to change together, because since both affect each other, as one changes, the other follows suit. This is why positive social change will be so much easier once there is momentum, okay? It's like a snowball. It will sort of build up. So to expect people to be decent in an indecent time, well, it isn't advisable, but it's understandable how we remain victims of culture purely because we are social organisms. So, the change has to come one way or another. And speaking of Batman movie morality, the next film in the Batman series provides an example of villain psychology with The Dark Knight, and in particular, Bane's revelations and rhetoric. And just for posterity, I will read this the speech itself. Quote, "Behind you stands a symbol of oppression, Blackgate Prison, where 1,000 men have languished under the name of this man, Harvey Dent, who has been held up to you as a shining example of justice. You have been supplied with a false idol to stop you from tearing down this corrupt city. Let me tell you the truth about Harvey Dent. From the words of Gotham's Police Commissioner James Gordon, the Batman didn't murder Harvey Dent, he saved my boy, and took the blame for Harvey's appalling crime, so that I could, to my shame, build a lie around this fallen idol. I praised the madman who tried to murder my own child. While I can no longer live with my lie, it is time to trust the people of Gotham with the truth, and it is time for me to resign. And do you accept this man's resignation? And do you accept the resignation of all these liars, of all the corrupt? We take Gotham from the corrupt, the rich, the oppressors, of generations who kept you down with myths of opportunity, and we give it back to you, the people. Gotham is yours. None shall interfere. Do as you please. Start by storming Blackgate and free the oppressed. Step forward those who will serve, for an army will be raised. The powerful will be ripped from their decadent nests and cast out into the cold world that we know and endure. Courts will be convened, spoils will be enjoyed, blood will be shed. The police will survive as they learn to serve true justice. This great city, it will endure. Gotham will survive." And one question I would have for Bane is, how? Now that you've torn down, the top echelons of control of Gotham City, how is everything managed now? I mean, for those of you who've, I'll get back to that in a second, but for those of you who've watched Batman Begins, you will know of the League of Shadows, who essentially function as a small army of assassins and terrorists, cleansing areas of immoral and corrupt people. Right? Kind of like the God of the Old Testament with Sodom and Gomorrah. Bane is effectively representing the interests and mission of the League of Shadows by going back to Gotham, this time just getting rid of the rich elite instead of the original intention being citywide extermination. But I suppose in that sense, Bane is a step up and makes a few more good points. But, one thing that I find lacking in Bane's plan is the alternative that would prevent further corruption. Since Gotham City uses the monetary system just like we do, how can Gotham ever be corruption-free? Is Bane and his bandit soldiers going to change that for the better? Yeah, essentially, there is a good and evil struggle going on between two equally violent ideas in this film. The status quo, defended by, Batman and Fox and Commissioner Gordon and all that good stuff, and undirected anarchy, obviously driven by Bane and all that lot. Now, I am very careful to qualify anarchy in that way, because anarchy itself is just nothing more than the idea of living without leaders. That's it. But, because if you think about it, it is the perfect approach when it comes to a variety of situations in human life. But for the purposes of making a comic book movie, we need to make the anarchists the bad ones. Sorry, we have been trying to demonize anarchists for decades now. It became cliche to dump on punks for being against Thatcher. But whatever the media show you, we show you protests. We got to show you at least a few anarchists running around in a black hoodie and a mask, scrawling a letter A on buildings, such utter scallywags they are, breaking windows, becoming supervillains and blowing up hospitals and stadiums. Oh, hey, wait a minute. What is the media trying to teach us? So, But yeah, it's the idea that Bane doesn't actually put anything for. I mean, he does have a point, I suppose, in a sense, with the corrupt. But then again, corruption. The behaviour that we see that we label as corrupt doesn't actually qualify as corruption, because corruption is something that is a detriment to the system in and of itself. The behaviour that we call corrupt, does that damage the system? No, that sustains the system. So it's the opposite of corrupt. The system itself is a corruption of natural systems. Take for example the natural biosphere on this planet. That is a system. Right? It works a certain way. Its natural laws demand certain things of us in order for us to continue to maintain our survival. And having a systems-based approach to how we manage that's one of the ways that we can actually have a better way of living. But it's not taught in this film. Obviously, because we've got to demonise something. But anyway, moving on. Another film that I'll go on to, and I think I'll probably, finish this out soon, because I have been going on for quite a while. Is the Purge films. Both the Purge and the Purge Anarchy. I'll merge these both together, because the second film does sort of carry on. When you watch the second film, you can tell the ideas have evolved a little bit, and you can see in the film the natural results that would occur when that sort of thing is allowed to sort of process and go through a few times. But essentially, the Purge films are based on a faulty premise. They are either based on a faulty premise, or they are one of the main plot points is a faulty premise. But essentially, it's that human beings are inherently violent, so that in order to cleanse ourselves and purge ourselves of these violent tendencies, we should have one night a year for 12 continuous hours. All crimes are legal. And there's certain limitations on it where there's a certain class of weapon, you can use up to a certain class. Obviously you can't go use nuclear warheads, but you can shoot people and stuff like that. And there's people who are in the highest positions in government. They're protected from the purge and all that. They're immune, exempt from the purge, all that sort of stuff. But you have 12 hours to basically get it all out of your system, and then you can go about your life. And, the film does claim to, I think it has a lower general crime rate, but it's just a complete absurd idea that somehow, for not just the idea that human beings are inherently violent, but also that, by doing anything we want, by having no holds barred, no rules whatsoever for 12 hours, that's somehow going to cleanse us of our naturally violent. I mean, if we're naturally violent, then doing a purge once a year is not going to do a damn thing about it, you know. But yeah, there's also the idea that that the second film expands on a little bit more, is the kind of mind lock that occurs with people that are purging, because in the purges there's the idea that there was like this second American Revolution, and there's like a new constitution and everything sorted out, and there's a new founding fathers, and one of the rights that they granted the citizens of the United States in this film is the right to purge if they want to. They don't have to, but if they want to, they can. And this is, you know, it's both a parallel of how the Second Amendment has been abused by certain American people who, you know, they basically say, I was granted the Second Amendment by my Constitution, so I'm exercising my, you know, some people say my God-given right, but my constitutional right, I'm exercising it. But in the films, in the Purge films, they go a little step further. Not just you have the right to have guns, but you have the right to use those guns however the fuck you want for 12 hours a year. You know? So, you know, what do you think is the inevitable result of that? Ladies and gents, you should know what the results of that would be. The results of the purge is, you know, an ever-growing tendency of, and an ever-growing degree of violence. And one of the things that the second film expands upon is how rich people purge by actually essentially purchasing people off the street, you know, whether they're, you know, chronically ill people. They basically pay a huge amount of money to the person's family to be able to take that dying person away and kill them in a sort of like ritualistic fashion, because that's how they purge, right? And that's something that I can see completely understand. I can completely see that sort of thing happening. Because, you know, I mean, those are the kind of values that the rich have. They do generally look down on the poor. Not because they consider them with malice, but because they generally see them as an inferior species. Well, not an inferior species, but they're an inferior class, and there's certain conditioning that they have to be given, because otherwise, you know, you can't achieve. I mean, unless you inherit wealth, you can't necessarily achieve a huge amount of wealth and success unless you have at least in part bought into the ideas of capitalistic society, you know. So there's the buy-ins that the characters have to these notions that being able to kill anyone that you want, or not just being able to kill, it says all crime is legal. So, you know, and I mean, I expect when I first saw all crime, including murder, will be legal for 12 continuous hours, I thought to myself, right, how many rapes are going to be in this film? But it doesn't focus on that. For some reason, I think it's mainly because when human beings encounter the idea of, you know, all crime being legal, I think for most people, I mean, it's certainly for me, the first thing that shot to my mind, murder legal, you know. But yeah, it's the film does start to express, and especially in the second one, there's a transformation that a character goes through. That because I'm thinking of actually doing a review of the Purge films to expand on this further, because it is a very, very good, very well told story of personal transformation. But that being said, I've gone over 2 hours now. Crikey, I've gone over 2 hours, so I really should close this out now. So, but I mean, there's loads more films that I need to go through. There's even some that I really wanted to go into that I'm not going to have time to. But I'll tell you what, I'll do a round 2 of this, because there's TV shows and stuff because I've mostly focused on a couple of films. But there are some TV shows that really sort of delve into a lot of morality tales and ethical conundrums and so forth. But I will close this podcast down now. So just the usual announcement for those of you listening to this on YouTube. Look on TalkShoe for it. You can find the link down in the video description. The usual plug is for the Zeitgeist Movement Defined. If you want to find out how to get a copy of it, either for free download for PDF or get a physical copy for a very, very small price, go to www.thezeitgeistmovement.com/orientation and you will find details there. But also, this podcast was sponsored by Crystal Clear Conscience, the brand new holographic technology to give you a much better angle of arriving at decisions. So if you go to www.crystalclearconscience.com/offer and enter the code name Adam123, you'll get the email address of that temp who can rush you through the vetting process. This podcast was also brought to you by my triad of sponsorship, being Russell Brand, Caroline Lucas and Sir Patrick Stewart. So please, by all means, find a way to thank them for their support of this podcast. The more of us thank them, the more likely they are to come on. But as for next time, I will have that interview, so keep your ear to the ground about that. But that's all from me. I thank you all for listening, and I'll speak to you all another time. Take care.